Hello my beautiful watchers. Fun question for you, who has 2 thumbs and damaged vocal cords? This guy. It's nothing irreparable, in fact it will heal entirely on its own, but only if I give myself some vocal rest, which is a bit of a problem when my full-time job is to monologue at a camera for hours on end. The solution I've devised is to reach out to some YouTuber friends of mine and ask them to fill in for me for the next 2 episodes. This installment is being covered by my friend Kate, aka that movie chick who you might remember from The Thing Lost in Adaptation. Just to be clear, this is still going to be all my writing and editing. She's going to be saying things like, in my opinion, but what she means by that is, in my opinion, because it turns out I've gotten so used to writing my scripts in a first-person format, I am now incapable of doing it any other way. Basically what I'm trying to say is if there's any dumb mistakes in this episode, they are 100% DOMs. Hope you enjoy.
Dom's beautiful watchers, that movie chick here, and welcome to Lost in Adaptation, the internet review show that compares film adaptations to the book they're based on, to see how loyally they stuck to the original plot. The Bourne Identity is a spy fiction thriller written by Robert Ludlum in 1980. It tells the tale of a man with no memory, but an impressive array of combat and espionage skills, and a string of clues leading to his past life. Ludlum supposedly conceived of the idea of an amnesiac assassin after experiencing a genuine, but fortunately less extreme bout of memory loss himself. After Identity was well received, Ludlum went on to write 2 more books, making a trilogy. Then after he passed away in 2001, fellow author Eric von Lustbader picked up the series, writing 12 more, making a fuck ton of Bourne books. The Bourne Identity was adapted into film twice. Once in 1988, directed by Roger Young and starring Richard Chamberlain and Jacqueline Smith. Then again in 2002, the subject of today's episode. Directed by Doug Liman with screenwriting by Tony Gilroy and William Blake Herron, the 2002 version starred Matt Damon as the titular Jason Bourne, and a supporting cast including Franco Potente, Chris Cooper, Clive Owen, Brian Cox, and Adewale Akinnuoye Agbaje. It's an adaptation in name only. Sorry, I thought I should probably rip that band-aid off as quickly as possible. There's some tie-ins here and there, but for the most part, the film just took the concept of the amnesiac super spy and went in their own direction with it. In light of this, following the usual Lost in Adaptation 3-part format would be a bit pointless, so instead, I'm going to recap both versions of the story separately before talking about the few similarities and the particularly ironic changes. As the film seems to be the more popular of the two by an unprecedentedly huge margin, for dramatic purposes, I'm going to start with that and save the lesser-known book until the end. The film starts with a rather soggy American being pulled out of the Mediterranean Sea. Against all recommended medical practices, a sailor performed surgery on him to remove several bullets from his back on a rocking boat with no gloves, anesthetic or antiseptic. In the process, he discovers a cool laser projector inside his skin that contains information about a vault in a Swiss bank. Despite this infection nightmare, the man wakes up almost immediately but has absolutely no memory of who he is or how he became driftwood. Cutting to CIA headquarters, Conklin, a man in charge of a Black Ops subdivision codenamed Treadstone, is informed that a mission has gone tits up. After just 2 weeks, he's completely recovered and sets out for Zurich to see about this vault business. While traveling, 2 unnecessarily pushy cops harass him, and all 3 of them are surprised to discover that he is not a man to be messed with lightly. Back at the CIA, the top brass are concerned because exiled African dictator Nkwana Wambosi is on TV claiming he has proof that the agency tried to assassinate him. Abbott, a senior staff member, asks Conklin if Treadstone was involved, and he confirms they sent an agent to kill Wambosi but lost contact with him 2 weeks ago. Meanwhile, our currently unnamed protagonist makes his way to the Zurich bank, and after being relieved to discover he's the rightful owner of the vault, he opens it to discover a lot of cash and fake IDs that designate him, amongst multiple other names, Jason Bourne, resident of Paris. He also finds a handgun, but decides not to take that with him. After he leaves the bank, some policemen start tailing him, so he takes cover in the American consulate building. Bourne has just enough time time to see a German woman failing to get a travel visa and complaining about money issues before security catches up to him, resulting in more fights and a mad dash around and down the outside of the building. He approaches the woman he saw before, Marie Kreutz, and offers her a lot of money to drive him to his address in Paris. Back at Treadstone once again, Conklin is shocked to be informed his agent is still alive and just cleared out his emergency vault in Zurich. His team see Marie on security footage and start a manhunt on both of them. He later escalates this by activating 3 sleeper agents with orders to kill Bourne. On their way to France, Bourne decides to take a leap of faith and trust Marie with his entire limited backstory and his concerns about his instinctive violent tendencies. They get to Paris, but don't find much in his apartment. The first of the 3 assassins surprises them and tries to kill Bourne, but is defeated in knife-to-pen combat. Rather than be interrogated by his captor, he chooses to run through a door and off the edge of the balcony in what I can only assume was an unintentionally very humorous death scene.
Suicide Squad! Attack! That showed him, huh?
Bourne tries to talk Marie into abandoning him and saving herself. She chooses to stay, so gets to go on an epic car chase through the streets of the city. Wombosi's presented with a corpse and told it's the man who tried to kill him, but is not fooled, so Treadstone reassigns the second assassin sent after Bourne to snipe him through a window to stop him from causing more trouble. While hiding out at a cheap hotel and changing their appearances, Bourne and Marie get to know each other a little better. Bourne later finds a connection between him and Wombosi and discovers that someone tried to kill the dictator while he was on a yacht, very close to where Bourne was found floating near death. Meanwhile at Treadstone, they still super want to kill Bourne. There's a lot of dramatic dialogue, but that's the gist of it. Marie takes him to a friend's vacation home to lie low, though is surprised to find her friend is unexpectedly there, which is awkward. The second assassin tracks them down, but like everyone else so far, is defeated by Bourne, who is probably quite pleased to have access to an ancient shotgun instead of a pen this time. A mortally wounded Clive Owen assassin tells Bourne they're both Treadstone employees before dying, referencing some sort of conditioning they went through to make them super killers. Bourne decides to go on the offensive, sending Marie away with her friend and calling Conklin to set up a one-on-one meeting. Conklin, of course, doesn't really come alone, but it turns out this was part of Bourne's plan, using the opportunity to track him back to his local safe house. Assaulting the building at night, he gets the drop on Conklin, who confirms Bourne used to be a Treadstone field agent, and again referencing an extensive experimental treatment that was used to turn him into the ultimate assassin. This triggers a flashback for Bourne of his last mission, and he remembers he couldn't bring himself to kill Wombosi while he was surrounded by his children, and was shot in the back while trying to bug out. Bourne fights his way out of the building, partly by surfing a corpse down a multi-story sheer drop in blatant defiance of physics and good special effects. Abbott decides to cut the CIA's losses and has the final assassin kill Conklin instead of Bourne, burying the whole Treadstone project. After some time and effort, Bourne tracks down and is reunited with Marie in Mykonos. At the time of its release, the Bourne Identity was pretty successful at selling itself as a more gritty, realistic, action-oriented James Bond. So successful, in fact, the influence came full circle, and later Bond movies became significantly more gritty, realistic, and action-oriented. It's not entirely fair to say that the plot is just an excuse for the action, but it's not exactly more important than it either. Although what plot there is suspiciously similar to The Replacement Killers and Long Kiss Goodnight, as if the director took out all the bits he liked and smashed them together. In a weird disparity in quality, the fight choreography is amazing, but the sound effects for things like punching and kicking sound like they were taken from the stock files that come with Windows Movie Maker. Hats off to Matt Damon, who apparently trained super hard for this role and did a lot of his own stunts. I thought it was a nice touch that Jason quickly checks a map of the city to figure out where to go before embarking on his car chase. And that actually makes it more amusing that they were super inconsistent about which parts of Paris they filmed in. So if you're familiar with the landmarks, it looks like he's teleporting all over the place during those scenes. Okay, well, that was the adaptation. Now let's take a look at what it was adapting. Just before we start though, I'm afraid I must include a trigger warning for victims of sexual assault, as that unfortunately is the basis of a big turning point in this book. The tale begins with a man being shot in the head on a boat just off the Mediterranean coast and falling into the sea. Shortly afterward, the boat explodes and he loses consciousness. Fishermen find him and bring him to an island doctor by the name of Washburn, who was living his life in exile from his homeland of England due to malpractice issues involving his rampant alcoholism. Sobering up enough to perform life-saving brain surgery, Washburn nurses the mysterious man back to health. When he regains consciousness, due to a combination of his head wound and time adrift, he can't remember anything about his life before being in the water. Washburn also discovers a subdermally implanted microfilm in his patient's leg that contains info on a Swiss bank vault in Zurich. He spends 6 months recovering, then Washburn recommends putting him on a work placement on a fishing boat to see if that jogs his memory. Unfortunately, all it leads to is a fight between him and the sailors where he discovers he knows kung fu and nearly kills 3 of them. Washburn gives him a fake passport and helps smuggle him to Switzerland. After some shenanigans, he makes it to Zurich and has a look inside his vault. It contains $5 million and a ton of fake passports and IDs. In gratitude for saving his life, he transfers $1 million to Dr. Washburn and sends the rest to be picked up in Paris. He has some clues and a strong feeling his next destination should be there. He also discovers his name is Jason Bourne and finds some references to a company called Treadstone 71, but can't find any hint of their existence anywhere else. On his way out of the bank, he's jumped by some armed goons who he manages to fight off and escape. They track him down again at his hotel, forcing him to grab another guest to use as a meat shield. Her name is Marie St. Jacques, a Canadian government employee there for a conference, and she's obviously not super keen on being kidnapped. Bourne gains her acquiescence by hitting her, shoving a gun in her face, and constantly lying about letting her go soon. She makes several attempts to escape, to increasingly violent results, eventually agreeing to be his driver as he's been too hurt in his constant fights to do it himself. Bourne's clues eventually lead him to a German disabled war veteran who tries to shoot him. While Bourne is busy killing him, Marie escapes and runs right into the clutches of the hired killers pursuing them. Feeling guilty about dragging her into his mess, Bourne tries to barter for her release, but fails and she's led away to be murdered. Bourne does more gritty fighting and kills his would-be executioners. He then hurries over to rescue Marie, finding that her captor has decided to rape her before shooting her. He fights him off, taking more serious injuries in the process. This is a part of the book that I found particularly distasteful. Marie is so very grateful that Bourne did this. She chooses to save him in return by dragging him to a back alley doctor and staying with him as he recovers. She spends the rest of the book hero worshipping him and falls head over heels in love, constantly referring to him stopping her rape and being willing to die to save her. Apparently, she chose to edit out of her headcanon the fact that she never would have been in that situation in the first place if he hadn't violently assaulted her and threatened her life multiple times to save his own ass. They traveled to Paris together to keep following clues to Bourne's past and identity, getting into more shenanigans, trying to withdraw his money under intense surveillance from his enemies. Bourne eventually discovers that the men trying to kill him are in the employ of a man named Carlos, the world's most famous and successful assassin and crime boss, the guy who started his career with the assassination of JFK and moved up from there. Bourne is distressed to find more and more evidence that in addition to being Jason Bourne, he also sometimes used to go by the codename Kane. He was a former paramilitary mercenary in a group called Medusa. He had aspirations of taking Carlos' spot as top dog assassin, and to this end had spent the last 3 years killing as many people as possible at a discount rate. After learning this, he starts to hear the words, "Get Carlos, trap Carlos, kill Carlos," in his head over and over again. Unknown to Bourne, during all this, government agents in America are freaking out because it turns out Treadstone 71 is a secret special ops agency that he works for as a deep cover agent. He was just pretending to be an assassin to draw Carlos out, knowing he would be enraged by his actions and attempt to squash his new rival as quickly as possible. Due to his 6 months of inactivity and his unexpected withdrawal of his cover money, they now think Bourne has changed sides to work for Carlos, or gone rogue and stolen the cash. It's revealed the lead's name isn't even really Jason Bourne. That was a guy he killed and assumed the identity of at the start of his deep cover mission. His real name is David Webb. Only 8 people know about this, and unfortunately, Carlos uses his network of spies and turncoats to get wise to the whole thing, and sends men to attack the Treadstone 71 headquarters, killing almost all of them and using planted fingerprints to frame Bourne. Meanwhile, Bourne has been infiltrating a fashion store that he learned is being used as a front for Carlos. The info he gets there leads to a General Villiers, a war hero and public figure beloved by most of France. Even though it seems unlikely, Bourne at first assumes he's a spy working for Carlos. However, when they meet and have a manly fight, he learns Carlos killed his son, and he hates him with every fiber of his being. Figuring someone close to him is the spy, he almost immediately suspects his young wife, and she does indeed turn out to be Carlos's first cousin, and lover. They make a plan to use her to get to Carlos, but Villiers loses his mind with rage and strangles his wife before they can put it in motion. Bourne adjusts the plan on the fly and takes the blame for the murder to lure Carlos into chasing him to America to avenge his incestuous love. He leads him to New York and the former Treadstone 71 headquarters where they have a climactic battle. Bourne, now the only person in the world who's seen his face and lived, thinks he looked familiar and might even be a public figure of some sort, but he can't place him because of his memory loss. The government finally gets the full story and believes Bourne's innocence, and the book ends with him and Marie under 24-hour protection while they wait for his memory to hopefully come back. On the last page, he remembers his real first name is David, so that's nice. The main issue I have with the Bourne Identity is just how incredibly overwritten it is. It is 523 pages, and it could very easily have been half that without losing any of the story I just described, or any of the many bits I didn't even include. There's a halfway interesting plot in there, but it's buried under the kind of blabbermouth verboseness that makes me wonder if Ludlum was being paid by the word like Gaston Leroux. I have to give you an example of this. Not long into the book, Bourne recognizes a man who tried to kill him once already, and knows has a silencer on his gun. That's all the information he needs to give you. But he chooses to present it as... Then, from the other door, another figure emerged. But it was not the driver, who had been at the curb on the Bahnhofstrasse, waiting for a target he did not recognize. Instead, it was another killer, in another raincoat, its wide pockets recessed for powerful weapons. It was the man who had sat in the reception room on the second floor of the Gemeinschaft Bank, the same man who had pulled a .38 caliber pistol from a holster beneath his coat, a pistol with a perforated cylinder on its barrel that silenced 2 bullets meant for the skull of the quarry he had followed into an elevator. That is so much unnecessary information and reminders of things that had just happened mere pages before. For goodness sake, why did he feel the need to tell us who the person wasn't? Repetition is also a big issue. Certain phrases are said over and over again, intended for dramatic effect, but it's done so many times, one's brain starts to feel like it's slowly melting. Again, as an example, Kane is for Charlie and Delta is for Kane is written 18 times, and the before mentioned get Carlos, trap Carlos, kill Carlos comes up 17 times. That's too many times! You can't repeat the same thing over and over again, even in a book this size. Ludlum also feels the need to constantly remind the reader that due to plastic surgery, Bourne has a super nondescript face that no one can remember or describe later. There's an entire chapter that could have been summarized into a sentence. Literally one sentence. Bourne spent the next few days sowing misinformation in enemy ranks. But no, we just have to hear detailed descriptions of every single encounter and every word exchange between him, and it doesn't confuse French people. This book doesn't even have the usual excuse for this, being serialized originally. It was always intended to be a super long, insanely repetitive tome of a novel. Every conversation that Bourne overhears turns out to be useful to him later in his espionage. This is supposed to imply he's resourceful and creative enough to make anything and everything useful. But after a while, it really starts to feel like Bourne exists in one of those hand-holding video games that throws hints in your face every few seconds via the dialogue. Gosh, it sure is hard work being a receptionist at a store that's secretly a front for organized crime, and having to carry around all these keys to secret vaults and this list of passwords to the secure server. I'm glad we have a bunch of new employees coming in today who none of us have met in person before, but will recognize because they're all wearing the exact outfit I have on now. Most of this book takes place in France, and weirdly, Ludlum only sometimes translates the French into English for the sake of the reader, and other times just has short blocks of French that you have to try to understand from context. Ludlum seems to have a really specific issue with slightly older women who used to be models, on multiple occasions describing them, their thinness, and their overuse of makeup in tones of unmissable disgust. So here's a final fun fact about this book. Carlos is a real person. Ludlum wrote real-life terrorist Elik Ramirez Sanchez, aka Carlos the Jackal, into his books. This is proven by the prologue that consists of 2 real-life newspaper articles about the killer. Wow, Ludlum must have been really sure Carlos would never escape from prison to write about him, presumably. without consent. Final thoughts. So yeah, like I said, the filmmakers clearly just like the setup of the book and not much else. No Carlos, no Medusa, no Washburn, no General Viles or his wife, no big Kane plot twist, pretty much nothing in common with the plot once he enters the bank. I didn't really care for the book, so I didn't find this too offensive, but from an adaptation critic point of view, I do have to acknowledge it's a bit disrespectful of them to help themselves to that and the name recognition that came with the title, while gutting everything else that the fans of the book might have enjoyed. Considering they went on to make the whole trilogy, I think said fans would justifiably take the most umbrage with the decision to completely erase the overarching villain of that trilogy. Carlos wasn't the most interesting of villains, but he was pretty damn integral to Bourne's arc. I also think if Ludlum had wanted to make the CA the uncontested, unscrupulous evildoers of the story, he, you know, would have. There are characters named Conklin and Abbott in the book, but they're nothing like the gentlemen of the film. Despite my use of them, their names are never actually said out loud in the film, so you'd only know they're supposed to be those guys if you check the credits. Likewise, the only thing the two Maries have in common is their first name. I must confess, I consider their love story in the film a vast improvement due to the lack of Bourne hitting her in the face for not doing what he told her to do, and her groveling gratitude for ending the sexual assault he was mostly responsible for getting her into in the first place. You see little references to the book, like one of his alter egos being called Kane, though amusingly they make a point of saying it's spelt with a K when it's a C in the book. The titles of the next 3 books in the series, The Bourne Supremacy, Ultimatum, and Legacy, were all used for the sequels to the film, but they all ended up having even less in common with their source material than the Bourne Identity. The latest installment in the franchise appears to have finally become self-honest about having nothing to do with the works of Robert Ludlum or Eric von Lustbader, and is simply titled Jason Bourne. I will say that I think a modernized Bourne Identity that's super loyal to the book was probably never feasible, regardless of the filmmaker's intent. So much of the book's plot is dependent on 1970s level technology to make sense. Half of the espionage involved getting to a phone at a certain time, easily forged papers, and a complete lack of photographic evidence of a person's existence. The addition of cell phones, widespread security cameras, or basic internet access would render most of the events nonsensical. That said, they could have tried just a little bit harder not to snub the book so utterly. Thank you for joining me, Dom's beautiful watchers. Before we part ways, be sure not to let amnesia make you forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and all the other good stuff that keeps YouTube channels from being assassinated by the YouTube algorithm. If you'd like to keep this new acquaintanceship going, you can check out my YouTube channel, There's the Thing. And as Dom would say, I hope you have a most pleasant day, and I will see you soon.
Much love and appreciation to my patrons of honor, Shelby Hotes and Matthew J. Brish. Hello again, my beautiful watchers. I just wanted to take this opportunity to give you a quick reminder that there's a wonderful website called Patreon that's been allowing online producers to actually make a living doing what they do, since apparently YouTube's decided that they shouldn't anymore. Basically, they offer the chance to pledge a certain amount of money per month or per video in exchange for various rewards offered by the creator. There's a variety of stuff you can earn by becoming one of my patrons, including early access to all videos and taking part in that survey you see at the start of every Lost in Adaptation episode. That's actually a very important part of the process, as I use it to gauge how much I'm going to need to explain about the book and the film before I start comparing them. If you decide to become a higher level contributor, your name will be added to the credits that you're seeing right now, and you'll be given the option to join my private chat room so you can regularly talk with me and other patrons. If you're keen enough to join the topmost tier of patronage, you'll earn the most coveted of all the rewards, the chance to pick a future adaptation to be reviewed by yours truly. However, if right now you are thinking, my goodness the Dom, I can't do that, for I have no money left after building a personal fortress to prepare for the coming zombie apocalypse. Do you have any idea how expensive a lifetime supply of food, water, and ammunition is? Fear not, it would still be a huge help to me if you were to give that like button the old clickaroo, share this episode on social media with perhaps a little recommendation to your friends to check it out, and subscribe if you've not already. It really helps my channel grow and reach new beautiful watchers. I hope you have a most pleasant day, and I will see you in the next episode.
I was like, you should see my bloopers, oh my god. The Bourne Identity is a spy fiction thriller written by I just want to say Robert Ludlum. The Bourne Identity is a spy fiction thriller written by Robert Ludlum in 1980. I'm sorry, I'm thinking of Loblert. Okay, The Bourne Identity is a spy fiction thriller
I feel like I cursed you by saying, man, I would have screwed that up like a bunch of times, and I've got you thinking about it.
I've been jinxed. It's okay. Ludlum supposedly conceived of the idea of an amnesiac it's Eric von Lustbader, right?
Eric von Lustbader.
According to Wikipedia, Eric van Lustbader is an
It is.
American.
Okay, okay, cool. Brian Cox. Oh, my tummy.
Hungry?
I guess. Feeling guilty about sorry, him feeling guilty and just made me laugh.
Yeah. Suddenly he goes to conscience.
Oh, I could fuck her later.
At the moment,
Which I saw, yeah, no one
no
had...
one's read the book.
Yeah.
Unless they've make eyes at film.
Confused French people. Like, well, let's put it this way. If I'm gonna say I'm not gonna like something, it means I've tried several times.
That's fair.
I'm not a quitter. Unless it stars Kevin Costner. Due to his 6 months of inactivity and his blabbermouth verboseness, that makes me wonder if Ludlum was being paid by the... Sorry, I'm laughing at the joke. By the world. And I think you also meant to put by the word.
What do I say?
By the world.
Hey, by the world! I have 16 planets for this book.
Quarry he had followed into an elevator.
Holy shit, you nailed that!
From a holster beneath its coat. His coat.
Oh, no,
Damn
that's
it.
the word you mess up, coat!
I know. I meant to...
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Curb on the Bahnhofstrasse.
You did it.
I know, but like it was like I ran out of breath saying it because it was such a long ass word. Okay. Gemeinschaft pink. Why?
Yep.
But it was not the driver who had been at the curb on the... Oh, wait.
Oh, we did not.
Nope.
Google it.
I know to say Ramirez Sanchez, but I don't know if that's like Leech or Lich or Lick. I'm leaving.
Aw.